Have you ever noticed how a simple "no thanks" can create a strange tension at a table? Nothing direct happens. No one confronts you, no one accuses you, but something shifts. The looks linger a little longer than they should. The conversation loses its rhythm for a few seconds. Someone cracks an awkward joke to ease the atmosphere. Another person asks, almost automatically, "But you really don't drink?" And when you confirm that you don't, that you simply don't want to, the question almost always comes back, rephrased, more curious, more insistent. But why? As if not drinking were a decision that required justification, as if you were breaking a silent rule no one ever explained, but everyone follows. What's curious is this: no one asks why someone drinks. Drinking is the default, not drinking is the exception. And when you are the exception, the discomfort isn't yours, it spreads across the entire table. Now, here's something important, because there is a huge difference between not drinking by conscious choice and not drinking because something inside you needs everything to stay under control. And that's exactly where the side almost no one talks about begins. The side that doesn't show up in light conversations, the side that isn't very comfortable to admit. So be careful. Not with alcohol. But with what this choice might be hiding, no. This isn't just about taste. It's not simply not liking the flavor. And most of the time, it isn't about health either. Of course, those reasons exist. But when someone avoids beer, consistently, repeatedly, almost automatically, we're talking about something deeper. We're talking about mental patterns, about how that person relates to risk, to unpredictability, to social belonging. Behavioral science has been observing this for decades. And the patterns that emerge are not random. Some are signs of self-awareness, others are signs of excessive self-protection, and here's the delicate point. The same trait that protects you can silently limit you. Many people who avoid beer share a specific psychological trait, a very high internal locus of control. In simple terms, this means they need to feel in command, not only of the big decisions in life, but also of the small, everyday experiences. They like knowing exactly what they're feeling, how they're thinking, how they're reacting. This is often seen as maturity, responsibility, emotional awareness, and to a certain extent, it really is. The problem begins when that control stops being comfortable and becomes indispensable. When any situation involving unpredictability, even something socially simple, like a buyer, generates internal tension, not because buyer is dangerous, but because it represents something outside the protrucated internal script. While some people simply go with the flow of the moment, these minds switch into analysis mode. They think before, they think during, and they think after. They evaluate consequences, they anticipate discomfort, they calculate emotional impact. This brings clarity, but it also creates distance, because when you're always 3 steps ahead, you're rarely fully present. Spontaneity starts to feel reckless. Improvisation feels unnecessary, and little by little, the simple pleasure of just being there gets replaced by constant internal surveillance. Another important factor is heightened sensory sensitivity. For these people, stimuli don't pass quickly, they linger. The bitter taste isn't just a detail, the slight change in the body isn't relaxing, the shift in thinking isn't fun, it's uncomfortable. Their nervous system works as if the volume were always turned slightly higher. Everything is felt more intensely, everything leaves deeper marks, and when something threatens to disrupt that internal balance, the natural response is avoidance. Avoid the drink, avoid the change, avoid anything that alters the mental state. But here's the point: almost no one talks about. Avoiding sensations also means avoiding experiences. And this is where we start, moving into the darker side of this choice. Now, we reach the most sensitive point of all. The point almost no one likes to face. For some people, not drinking isn't just a conscious choice, it's a deep psychological need to keep everything under control. The mind must stay clear, emotions must stay organized, reactions must remain predictable. Anything that threatens this internal balance starts to be seen as risk. Alcohol, in this context, isn't just a drink. It represents loss of precision, loss of sharpness, loss of dominance over one's internal state, and that's frightening. Not because the person is weak, but because they built their entire identity around the idea of control. The problem is that absolute control doesn't exist, and trying to maintain it all the time comes with a silent cost. When any altered state is interpreted as a threat, life starts to get overfiltered. Experiences become safer, but also more limited, and little by little, protection turns into armor. and armor starts to get heavy. There is a cost that is almost never mentioned. When we talk about this, it's not immediate. It's not something you feel all at once. It's gradual. Fewer spontaneous invitations, fewer conversations that start without planning, fewer light moments where no one is analyzing anything. You're still present, but only partially. You're there physically, but always. With a layer of emotional distance, people feel this even if they can't explain it, and little by little, they start to connect less. Not because you did something wrong, but because connection also involves vulnerability, and vulnerability requires letting go of control. When that doesn't happen, the bond weakens, and the loneliness that emerges isn't dramatic. It's functional, silent, hard to notice at first. Many of these people didn't arrive at this choice by accident. They observed, they saw friends lose control, they saw family members change their behavior, they saw impulsive decisions lead to unnecessary consequences. And they learned without needing to experience it themselves. This is adaptive intelligence, learning from other people's mistakes. But there's an important detail here. When you learn only by observing, you mainly learn what to avoid, not necessarily what to explore. Over time, this can create an excessively defensive relationship with life, as if any experience involving a temporary loss of control were automatically negative. And this reduces emotional range. You become very good at protecting yourself, but less experienced at allowing yourself. Society often says these people overthink, that they need to relax, that they take everything too seriously. Most of the time, that's shallow and unfair. But it's not always completely wrong, because the same self-control that brings coherence can reduce flexibility. The same clarity that prevents mistakes can prevent imperfect but essential human encounters. Real life doesn't happen only in well-planned moments. It also happens in messy moments, unpredictable ones, human ones, and when someone closes themselves off too much from these moments, they don't just lose risks, they lose experiences. Not drinking beer is not a problem, and it doesn't need to be fixed, but it's worth paying attention when that choice stops being freedom and becomes armor. When protecting your mind starts to distance you from the world, when internal coherence comes at the cost of external connection, true balance isn't about drinking or not drinking, it's about understanding why you choose what you choose, whether it's for clarity or fear of losing control. And this applies to far more than just a drink. If something you heard here resonated with you, there may be other patterns in your mind that haven't been explained yet. Subscribe to the channel not to change who you are, but to better understand why you function the way you do.